Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and we're going to be continuing our adventure with Express. What I want to do now is I just want to get our index page for our to-dos going. Okay, so let's go to our to-do controllers and figure out which page we're sending this to. Okay, so currently, okay, router.get the index page, which is it's going to be sending to a main.ejs page. Let me remember if I'm using that for anything else. Nope, I'm not, so we can use this. This works. So, little title. Call this your to-dos. Cool. That's going to be the top of the page. So here's where we're going to kind of really explore the benefits of using EJS files and why it's while you're doing HTML, what makes it different than a normal HTML file. And the reason we're able to use EJS is because it is an installed dependency. So you can see here in your package.json file that it was installed. So it's in your node modules folder. It's part of all. So basically, we've kind of talked, I think, about most of these. So again, bcrypt was how we encrypt the password. .env kind of manages our environment variables. EJS is our templating engine, which we're going to use now. Express is our web framework, which we're using to create our router and to spin up our server. Express session creates that session, so that cookie that we can store information in that will stay in the person's computer. So as they go from page to page, we still have that information stored in session. We have method override, which will make more sense once we start taking a look at the delete and edit route. Moment, which we're not going to use in this, but again, that's just for working with dates. Okay, Mongoose, which is how we connect it to our Mongo database. That's the tool for doing that. And then there was Nodamon, which we're using to spin up our server. Okay, and that allows us, so while we can spin up our server without it, what Nodamon does, especially for development, every time we make a change, it restarts the server so that way our changes take effect. The reason being is that when you start up your server, it takes basically a snapshot of your code and runs it. So if you make any changes to it, if you don't restart your server, what the server is serving isn't the new version of your code that you've just changed, it's what it initially loaded at startup. So that's why we have that. Okay, so those are our dependencies up to this point. Okay, now to make an application, you always need these specific. Nope, there's alternatives for all of these, but this boilerplate, these videos are to help you work with this particular set of dependencies. Okay, cool. So now that we know that, let's go back to main.ejs. So what's going to happen is that we're going to have, what we can do is that when we make our routes, we can pass data to our template. So that's what we do here. So if we go back to our controller, to-do controller, you see here, after we say, hey, when someone goes to, what's going to be basically to-do /, because again, all the to-do controllers always start with to-dos as we defined in the index.ejs. When they go there, the first thing it's going to do is go into our to-do collection, because here's our to-do schema, which we brought in up here. It's going to go find a to-do based on whatever query we hear. Right now, that query has nothing. So it's going to find all the to-dos. I really only wanted to find a particular user's to-do. So how would I do that? Okay. Well, we should have the username, because back in our, if we go back to our user controller and take a look at our login, when someone logs in, we actually store their username in this variable here, request.session.user. And there's where we store the username that was used on login. So we have access to that as long as they're logged in. So what I'm going to do is that generally if you want to query the data query when you do a to-do.find or whatever .find, you put your query in here. So I need to know what the fields are in a to-do. So we go back to our to-do model. I have 3 fields, title, description, and username. So I'm going to do the query based on username. Okay, so I go back to to-do controller. So in here, in this object here, I'm going to write username, and I want it to match the rec.session.user. So that username that we have stored in our session cookie. Okay, so I was going to go in there, take a look at all the to-dos, see if there's any to-dos that are associated with this specific user, and then it's going to set, and that's going to return that as our data, because that's what we specified here. We call it data. So then what we're going to do is afterwards, we're going to send our response. Oh, almost made a mistake. So let's fix this. Just to make it all uniform, we want this to be not request, but rec, because in all my other routes I have it as rec res, not request response. Because if I left it as request and response both spelled out, this would not work. So in that case, I need to change this to res, because again, request and response has to match the way I define my two parameters here. Cool. So request response to do dot find, good. Request user session. Then again, it sends us the data back from the database. And then our response to the users, we're going to render a page. So there's different responses. So whenever you see res, that just means response. We can either render a page. So in this case, we're going to render this EJS file. We can redirect them to another page. So we can redirect them to some other route. So there's different ways you can use different types of responses. Okay. For the most part, those are the two we're going to need. We're either going to render a page, which is all the pages are located in our views folder. That's where Express looks by default. It's going to look for a views folder and look to see if there's files in there that with this name, main.ejs. And then what we can do is that when we do res.render, the first variable is what file we're looking for, and then comma, a second parameter we send in there is an object with any data we want to use when we render. So I'm saying, hey, you know what? When you render that main.ejs file, we're going to pass it through with we're going to create a variable called data that you can use in the template, and that data variable is going to contain data, which is what we got back from the database. Okay, so basically it's going to give back us all those to-dos as an array that we can use. Cool. So we just got to remember that it's called data in our template. So now if we go back to our main.ejs, main.ejs, which is right somewhere, public app.ejs. Am I looking in the right folder? Yeah, I'm looking in the right folder. And I have main.ejs here. So where did it go? Oh, the views folder's right here. Okay, main. H1, your to-dos. So how would I use that variable? Okay, well, what I want to do is I want to just not show just one to-do at a time, because I don't know how many to-dos I'm going to get back. So I'm going to want to kind of iterate over this data variable we sent over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. So if you ever want to do EJS, as you'll notice, like up here, anytime you want to kind of use templating code, you're going to surround it by these types of syntax. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, you know what? For every to-do in data. So basically it's going to look at the data array and say, we're going to loop over that data array. And for every to-do in data, we're going to do something. And then again, we'll be able to access that to-do as a variable called to-do. So that to-do is going to represent the to-do in that particular iteration of the loop. Okay, and that's going to be like JavaScript. So we need to make sure that we put our expression in parentheses. And just like a normal for loop, we're going to create an opening bracket. And then we'll close there. And then we want to make sure that we put a closing bracket for our loop. We'll put that down here. Oh, I don't want to take a screenshot. Cancel. And here's our closing bracket. Okay. And essentially, it's just going to keep going over the to-do in this order. Okay, cool. So we'll say for each one, we're going to create a div. And we'll give that div a class of to-do so that we can style it later. So each to-do will get a div. Okay. Cool. Div class to do, and then we're gonna say for that div, inside that div, we're gonna have an h1. That's gonna include the title. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put in the title of the to do in there. Okay. And that's going to be parentheses. It's basically the same deal, except now we're gonna put the equals because we're actually gonna print something to the screen. So that little equals there is going to basically tell us for this particular templating piece, we're printing something onto the screen. We're not just interplaying JavaScript in there. Okay, so what I want in there is going to be to do, because again, each time we make the loop, we're making that element from the data array is going to be called a to do. That's essentially what that's saying. So that particular to do we want to use there, and let me go to the model to make sure I'm using the right names. Oh, wrong app. Close this one out. I want to look in the tutorial to do app in the to do, not to do controller. I want to look at the to do model. So title and description. Title and description are my two fields. So in the H1, we're going to do to do dot title. Okay, and then I'll close that off and close my H1. So whatever the title is of that particular to-do will show up there. And then we'll do a p tag for the description. So parentheses equals to-do dot description. Okay, and if you're wondering where that to-do variable is coming from, let's walk through this one more time. Okay, so basically in the route, so basically this page gets rendered when we access this route, which then searches for data in the database, returns it in this data variable, and then we're going to render that main.ejs file, that template, and say, hey, we're going to pass another variable into that template called data, and that data is going to come from the data over here. Okay, so that's what this is referring to. Saying, hey, this data over here. We're going to send it to the template with the name data. I could call it anything. So then that variable data gets passed on to here. And then again, we're going to run a for loop over it by saying for each to do, which could be any variable. I could write X instead. But let's just say for each to do, because each element, each item in the array is a to do. So for each to do in my data array, do this, anything in between these brackets. So it's just going to keep printing out all these to do's. Okay, even though there aren't any right now. So the problem is I can't test this out because I don't have any to do's. So I need to be able to make to do's. So we need to make a form. We'll put it below the list of to do's where we can add a to do. So I think I got some boilerplate around here in some of these other files. Login, index, new user. We can actually use the new user form as a starting spot, so we'll copy that one over. Okay, actually I want that H1 as well. Or I can just copy it from our login page, because that already kind of has it all nice and formatted. So, no, actually it's in our index, because we put it in our index page. Here we go. That's nice and pretty. So we take the form from there. Perfect. Okay. And then I'm going to post that into my main right below the loop. And we'll just change that and say, hey, so basically when this form gets acted on, we need to send it to the route that creates a new to-do. So let me go back to my to-do controller and see where is the new to-do route. Well, this would, if we wanted to create a separate page to create the new to-do, that's what this would do, which is fine. But I'm just going to take that out just to keep that route simpler. We're not going to need it, but that way it's there. What we want is the post route, because this is the one that actually creates it. This would be the idea basically here, where this would take you to a specific page to fill out the form to create a new to-do, which you could call new.ejs, and then from there when you submit the form it would send it to here. But I'm putting the form right there on the list of to-dos, so I don't need that separate page. I could just send it right here. So that would be, and again, just as a reminder, again in our index.ejs, anything in that file, that to-do controller, gets defined over here as having /to-do first. So now when I go back to my main.ejs, the right URL for this should be to-do / I think it's just to-do, and it's a post. Let me just take a look one more time just to be 100% sure. So yep, that's a router to the root of the to-dos, and it's a post request. Good. That'll send it to this particular route, which what it does, it creates a to-do. Where does it get the information from the to-do? From the request body, which is essentially the form you filled out. And then once it's done doing that, it's going to send you back to the route, but we don't want to send it quite there. We want to send it back to the to-do page. So we'll say to-do /. That's where it's going to send you. Back to the list of all your to-dos. Cool. Okay, so that's that. Let's go back to main.ejs. So that should do what we need it to do, and we'll say new to-do. And again, there's only really two fields we want to fill in. Title. So this is just the text on the screen saying this is the title field. And this is the description. Okay. And they're both going to be type text. So I'm not going to change that from type password to type text. So they're both texts. This is technically title, lowercase, because that's how we have it in our schema. And then this is going to be description. But that raises a question. My schema for my to-dos, so we go back to our to-do model, has another field, the username. But I didn't put that in the form. So where is that going to come from? Well, that's going to come from our session. So I got to make sure I take care of that. So let's go back to our route, to-do controller, or to-do control. And I need to make sure that I put the username in the session body. So I need to make sure that rec.body.username, because again, it's got to match the variable I created, or the schema, is going to equal the username we have stored away in our session. rec.session.user, if I'm correct. Let me just double check. Yeah, rec.session.user. I got it right up here. Okay, so basically I'm saying, hey, before you go put the body into a new to-do, go grab the username from the session and store it in the body. So that way it all works. Okay. So now that should technically be all, that should be all up and working. So let's test it out. I did add a header, so there's like a little navigation. But I'm going to refresh the page to make sure that it refreshes the newest version. Okay, let me take off the outline. Okay, and then I think we made a user before. Test. Password. Test. Which takes us to here, and there's our form for a new to-do. Take out the outline. Okay, and I'm going to type in some gibberish. Let me look at my terminal so far. So yeah, we logged in. We're all good, fine. Oh, I didn't change the name of the button. But you guys get the point. This should create a new to-do. So if I click on that, let's see if it works. Okay, let me take. It did not. What it should have done is showed my to-do. It should have showed a to-do over here, because it should have iterated it. So something isn't necessarily working right. Okay, I don't think I had any console logs to look there. So the only way for me to check will be to go take a look at my database. So let me go to cloud.mongodb, get to my database clusters. We'll see if the information is in there and see if it all got in there just fine. So we'll wait for this to load for a moment. Again, ideally what I should have done is I should have had some console logs in the route, so that way when it, so right over, well, I'll put it for this next time. So technically when it creates the route, so here it created the new to-do, I should have probably console logged the new to-do. which technically is stored in a variable called created. How do I know that? Because I specified it right there. Okay, so I want to console log that so I can see what was created if something was created. Okay, and then just to make sure that I stored the username correctly, I'm going to console log the rec body. I want to see that if the request body looks the way like it should. There. Okay. So for all intents and purposes, to do dot create rec body. That should work. We should have created a new to do. So let's see here. Here are my clusters. Let's go take a look at my collections. Okay, that's my other database. And look, the test database is there now because it created it because it wasn't there before. So again, you don't have to worry about whether the collection or database exists in your URL. As long as it connects to your cluster, it'll create any database or collections it needs to complete your request. Okay, so it should be in to-dos. That wasn't there before. So let's click on that. And there, hey, look, it was created. So that all looks good. Our to-do was created successfully. So that means the question is, why did it not show up on the screen? Because technically it should be showing up here. So let's go back and examine our main dot. Well, let's first examine this route, make sure that it is querying right. So what we should do is I'm going to console log data. Why? Because I want to make sure that it's actually finding, because I want to test to see that did it actually find that to do in the database. Because two things could be wrong. I either templated it wrong in the main.ejs file, or it's not finding the data. I don't know which one it is. Okay, so I'm going to put that there, so that way when we run through the test again, I can look at my console and determine that. And I'm going to go take a look at my main.ejs file just in case there's anything obvious, which is down here. So let's see here. For to do in data, that looks good to me. To do dot title, to do dot description. Okay, let's run one more test. So let's refresh. Although I'm probably not logged in now, so I should probably go back and log in again. Later on we'll configure it so that way it determines if you're logged in or not and sends you to the right page, but one step at a time. So let me log back in just to make sure that everything was working the way that it should. Okay, the to-do's not there. So let me go take a look at my terminal, see what printed out. So it did find the to-do. So that is good. That means it is finding it. So that's working. So then that means there's something wrong here. So one test I will do is I want to see if I can just print one variable from that. So what I'm going to do here is put data, because again it's an array, so put data 0 dot title, see if that prints. If that shows up on the screen, that means something is wrong with how the syntax of my loop, because this will confirm that the data is fine, is accessible from my template. Okay, so do that. I'm going to refresh. Probably going to have to log in again anyways. Yep, because I'm not logged in. So let's go back to here. We'll log in. We'll do this final test, and then we'll do more in the next video. Use to load the font URL because it violates the following. Unexpected token in. Okay, I created some sort of syntax error just now. So let's take a look at what I did. Oh, I put two equal signs. You only need the equal sign in the beginning. So let's save that. Let me refresh. That shouldn't have restarted the server. It should only restart when I change JS files. Okay, and see that time it did print that data piece. So the problem is with my loop. So I'll have to go double check, make sure my syntax is right. We'll revisit this at the beginning of the next video. So I'll see you guys then. Have a great day and enjoy. And make sure to go check out my website, alexmercedcoder.com. And follow me on GitHub, subscribe on YouTube. And hopefully you guys have found this useful, one in just learning how to use Express and Mongo, but also to kind of learn a lot of the tricks as far as like how to catch bugs, how to deal with things that are not working, how to look at errors. That's why I'm kind of making these videos extra long, so you're seeing the whole process. So I'll see you guys later on. Have a great day and enjoy.